Hi everyone, welcome to the Cairnmillar Institute information session for two courses we'll be talking about this evening, the Graduate Diploma of Psychological Science and also the Bachelor of Psychology in Honours. Before we get started, I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of the lands on which we are meeting today. And I'd also like to pay respects to the elders, both past, present and emerging, along with the Aboriginal elders of other communities who may be here today. So my name's Jo Brooker and I'm one of the course coordinators for the Bachelor of Psychology Honours program. We also have Roseanne Missajon, who's the other course coordinator for Honours, and Chris Kilby, who will talk to you about the Graduate Diploma of Psychological Science. We have Anne Cucci, who's our Deputy Academic Registrar, and she'll talk to you about administrative aspects of applying for our courses, and also Claudia Rochelle, who'll be helping us manage the Q&A and the chat. So this is the Cairnmillar Institute building. This is our main campus in Hawthorn East, based in Melbourne. And we're aware that one of our courses we're talking about is online and the other is on campus. But of course, if you are in the online course, you're very welcome to come to our campus to use the facilities. So I'll talk a little bit about the general strengths of Cairnmillar that apply across all our courses. So you'll benefit from being in a high quality learning environment, whether that's our specifically designed for online content delivery courses like the one Chris will talk to you about, or whether you come to our campus. We've got a beautiful modern building with great technology, lovely spaces for students to be in, a student lounge, etc., and a dedicated library. So one of our strengths also is that our lecturers are practitioners. So they're currently practicing psychologists, psychotherapists and counsellors. So when they teach you, they will bring real life case studies into the classroom, and their knowledge of contemporary practice of what's going on in mental health care delivery in Australia today. We also have a range of lecturers and tutors who are leading researchers in their field. So they'll be involved in research supervision and delivering our research methods units. We have study support skills, a dedicated study skills advisor that you can book sessions with for one-on-one support. She also runs workshops on a range of different study skills, as well as providing online resources that you can access. As I mentioned, we have a library that is 100% dedicated to the mental health area, including psychology, psychotherapy and counselling. There's lots of online electronic books that you can access if you're not coming to campus, as well as lots of journal subscriptions so that you can keep up to date with the latest research and the latest clinical practice literature. We have an open door policy, so you'll get to know all the teaching staff will know you by name because we have very small cohorts. It's quite a personalised, bespoke environment that we offer. So you can contact your unit coordinators and lecturers very easily. We don't hide our contact details, and you can contact us with any concerns or questions that you have. We also provide general careers advice and a range of career resources. In psychology, it's quite a complicated path to get through to the stage where you can be a registered and practicing clinician. So we provided guidance around that. One of the things that Cairnmillar does, in addition to delivering tertiary education and clinical services in our clinics, is that we also run professional development for people who are already practicing clinicians. So because we do that, we're able to offer those courses free or at very low cost prices to our students. So you can do mental health first aid, you can do the assist suicide intervention skills training and a range of other courses, which is a great way for you to get practical skills and also just to build your CV, which can be really helpful when you go on to applying for masters and jobs down the track. Our CEO is an organisational psychologist as well as a health psychologist, and she runs student leadership training for students who want to do some additional training about becoming leaders and also about becoming mentors. So students can train to be mentors, and other students can have a mentor in a higher level course at the Cairnmillar Institute. We have IT support that's readily accessible for students on campus and online as well. And when you enrol at Cairnmillar, you get a Microsoft Office suite with the various tools that you'll need, as well as other licensed software for students doing research methods units. So what I'm going to do now is hand over to Chris Kilby to talk a bit about the two courses, at least the pathways around those two courses that we'll be discussing this evening.
Great, thanks, Jo. Hi, everyone. As Jo mentioned, my name is Chris Kilby. I'm the Associate Head of School for Learning and Teaching at Cairnmillar, and I'm also the course coordinator for the Graduate Diploma and Graduate Certificate of Psychological Science. Just to start us off and talk a little bit about the different courses that we're talking about tonight and who might be interested in what. We have two audiences or two groups of people here tonight. In group one, our blue group, we have people that have a bachelor's degree or higher that's outside of psychology. You haven't studied psychology before, and maybe you're interested in moving into this field. The other group, our red group on the right, is our APAC accredited 3-year sequence bachelor degree in psychology students. So these are the students that have completed a bachelor's in psychology, or you've completed a graduate diploma in psychology. That's a 1-year bridging program. So we've got our people who have done a bachelor's in psychology or a graduate diploma in psychology, and those who haven't. They're the two groups. Can I grab the next slide, please? There we go. So let's talk about the first group of people, those who have a degree outside of psychology. This diagram looks a little bit complicated, but I promise you it's not that bad. If you have a bachelor's degree or higher outside of psychology, the first question we're going to ask is whether or not your WAM or your average grade on your bachelor's is above 65. If it is, you'll go straight into the Graduate Diploma of Psychological Science. This is our 1-year bridging degree. So what that means is that it's a 1-year degree. It takes 12 months to complete. And it's the equivalent of having studied a 3-year bachelor in psychology. So having completed the graduate diploma, you can then apply for a Bachelor of Psychology honours. So it's really important to stress the point here that the Graduate Diploma of Psychological Science is the equivalent of your first 3 years of a bachelor's. It's your bachelor's degree in psychology. The Bachelor of Psychology honours is a 4th year. It comes after the graduate diploma. They're not the same thing. If your WAM on your, oh, sorry, can we go back? There we go. If your WAM on your bachelor's is below 65, we'll ask you to complete a graduate certificate of psychological science. So this is just the first 4 units from the graduate diploma. So you start with the graduate certificate, and then as long as you get an average grade of 60 or higher in the graduate certificate, you move on to finish off the graduate diploma. The last bit of exciting news I have on this slide is that for those completing the Graduate Diploma of Psychological Science at Cairnmillar, if your average grade in that degree is 70 or higher, and you get a mark of at least 65 in PSY 402, our statistics unit, and PSY 408, our research unit, you'll receive an automatic offer into honours at Cairnmillar. Okay, I'm ready for the next slide now, please. Thank you. Let's talk about group 2, our red group. These are the people that have a bachelor's in psychology or a graduate diploma 1-year bridging course in psychology. For these students, the question I'm going to ask is whether or not your average grade on your bachelor's in psychology is above 60. If it is, you can apply directly for honours at Cairnmillar. If it's not, you'll be asked to complete the Graduate Certificate of Psychological Science. This is that first 4 units of the graduate diploma we were just talking about. And you can use the graduate certificate, at least at Cairnmillar, to try and improve your bachelor's grade. So if you didn't get quite the grade that you need, you can use the graduate certificate to try and bump it up a bit. If you do go down this pathway, at Cairnmillar at least, and you receive a WAM of at least 70, so an average grade of 70 in the graduate certificate, and an average mark, a mark of at least 65 in PSY 402 statistics, you can get an automatic offer directly into the honours program. So that's only for those who already have a bachelor's in psychology. Okay, I might leave that there and I'll continue on to the next section, and Joe and Rose can talk more about honours with you. So the schedule for tonight, we're going to start with the graduate diploma and graduate certificate, and then we'll move on to the Bachelor of Psychology honours, just because that's the natural sequence of those courses. And then we'll have Anne talk about the application admissions processes. All right, can I get the next slide, please? Let's talk about the graduate diploma. So I'm the course coordinator for the graduate diploma. It's a fully online program. So everything's done online, either through our online content management system, Canvas, or we also use Zoom and Teams as well. Graduate diploma is a fast-track sequence of study in psychology. So if you're coming into psychology, typically you have to spend 3 years in a bachelor's. If you've already got a bachelor's degree, then you can get away with doing the graduate diploma in a single year instead of doing 3 years in a full bachelor's. The graduate diploma is a pathway into honours. It's not an honours degree in and of itself. So I said that before, but I'll stress this point a lot because once upon a time, a graduate diploma of psychology is what we used to call honours, but not anymore. They're very different. You can complete a graduate diploma full-time or part-time. You can get fee help. And what I think is one of the most exciting things about the course, we don't have any exams. We have assessments and we have quizzes and all sorts of things, but we don't have any formal exams. If you do complete the graduate diploma, you will acquire knowledge and skills that can certainly be applied in whatever workplace you are now, as well as many other workplaces. Pretty much anything where you work with people, psychology is going to help you in some way. It'll make you eligible to apply for APAC accredited 4th year courses in psychology, such as honours. And as I mentioned before, the Graduate Diploma of Psychological Science at Cairnmillar, you can get an automatic offer into honours at Cairnmillar, depending on your grades. Can I grab the next slide? Thank you. For the Graduate Certificate of Psychological Science, this is the first 4 units of the Graduate Diploma, as I was mentioning before. And we'll go through exactly how this works out in a second. And depending on your circumstance, whether or not you're Group 1, Bachelor's outside of Psych, or Group 2, you have a Bachelor's in Psychology, the Graduate Certificate, that's my cat, the Graduate Certificate will be either an alternative entry into the Graduate Diploma or Honours. And as we were talking about before on the Pathways diagram, if you are in that Group 1, a Bachelor's outside of Psychology, and you're doing the graduate certificate, then you get an automatic offer into the graduate diploma if you have a grade of at least 60 in the graduate certificate. And if I can grab the next slide, if you're in Group 2, you already, sorry, can we go back? Thank you. If you're in Group 2, where you've got a bachelor's in psychology already and you're completing the graduate certificate, then you can get the automatic offer into honours depending on your grades. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. So a little bit about the course team before we go into the contents of each of our units. That's me. I'm Chris, as I said before, the Associate Head of School Learning and Teaching and the course coordinator of the Graduate Diploma. I also coordinate our statistics unit, PSY 402. Everyone's really scared of statistics, but I actually think it's kind of fun, and I think that we do actually get our students enjoying statistics by the end of it. My personal research interest is in the individual differences in stress. Right now, I'm spearheading a project called WAYS, the Working Around Youth Worker Stress group, where we're looking at youth residential worker stress and trying to understand how can we help support these people in a very, very stressful and traumatic workforce. I'm also the president of the Australasia Society of Behavioural Health and Medicine, so I'm very involved in the research field. Next slide, please. Miss Sasha Davies takes a number of our units. She's a lecturer here at Cairnmillar. She's soon to be doctor. Her PhD is being finalized as we speak. We're expecting outcome any day now. Sasha coordinates personality, PSY 401, our developmental psychology unit, and our research capstone unit. And I'll talk more about each of these in a second. Sasha's research interest is in pregnancy and parenthood, as well as how that affects cognitive functioning. Sasha and I are actually collaborating at the moment on a study looking at pregnancy and COVID stress. Janine is another one of she's a senior lecturer here at Cairnmillar, and she runs our social psychology unit. Janine is very well placed to be teaching social psychology. She's an executive member of the Society of Australasian Social Psychologists, and she was the team leader of social psychology at Deakin for a number of years. Janine's interest in research is really in social justice and social dilemmas. Next slide, please. The other two coordinators we have on the course, we have David Butler. He's a lecturer here at Cairnmillar and the International Student Academic Support Person. David coordinates PSY 405, our Behaviour and Cognitive Neuroscience unit. David has a broad range of research interests in cognitive psychology. Some of the most fascinating stuff I think he does is in comparative psychology, where he looks at the association between the sorts of behaviours we see in animals and cognitions and how that looks like or differs to humans. Finally, we've got Sue. Sue is a clinical psychologist and a senior lecturer. Sue coordinates our psychopathology unit as well as our psychology in practice. And when I get to describe psychology in practice, you'll see it's very related to what Sue does for a living. Sue's research area is also quite broad, but she has research at the moment looking at gender diversity as well as the autism spectrum disorder. Okay, so if you're studying full-time in the graduate diploma, what does this look like? In semester one, you will do personality, statistics, social psychology, and developmental psychology. And then in semester two in the same year, you'll do the other 4 units. So cognitive behavioral neuroscience, psychopathology, and our psychology in practice and research capstone units. Next slide, please. If you go part-time in the grad dip, we'll ask that you do personality and statistics in your first semester. While technically you could do the other 2 if you wanted, we very strongly recommend that you start with 401, 402, as it gives you a nice grounding for the rest of the year, the rest of the 2 years. In semester 2, you'll move on to do cognitive behavioral neuroscience and psychopathology. And then in your second year, you'll go to start off with the units from semester 1 that you didn't do in the previous year. So it should be social and developmental. And then you'll finish off with psychology in practice and the research capstone. Next slide, thank you. If you're doing the graduate certificate, so the first 4 units of the grad dip, it's quite literally the first half of whichever of those 2 systems you would have used. So if you're full-time, you'll be doing 401, 402, 403, 404. You can grab the next slide, please. If you go part-time, you'll do it over 2 semesters. And in your first semester, we'll ask that you do research design and statistics, but then you kind of have a bit of freedom here. You can pick personality, social, or development. We don't say that you have to do personality because here you will come back and do it eventually. And if you've already got a bachelor's in psychology, you might not need personality. You might actually be better off using social or development to increase your grades. So there's a bit more freedom with the graduate certificate. Worst case scenario, we recommend you stick with personality. And then in semester 2, you would do cognitive behavioral neuroscience and psychopathology. So 407 and 408 are really reserved only for those that are doing the graduate diploma. So what does studying the graduate diploma look like, or the graduate certificate? It's much the same. You'll be in the same cohort. You won't know who's who, so you all have the same learning experience. Every unit that you take has 3 hours of weekly content, online content on average. And we use a flipped classroom model. So what this means is that there's online pre-recorded lecture stuff that you do. It's about 1.5 hours worth of material. It might be narrated PowerPoint slides, it might be videos, it might be readings or activities. And then there's a 1.5 hour live tutorial that's conducted over Zoom every week. So you're looking at 3 hours per week per unit. So on a full-time workload, you're looking at 12 hours of online content per week. Our weekly online content, it might be small group discussions, case studies, online tasks, problem-based activities, and more. There's lots of different things we use. We have quite a diverse teaching staff, so you get quite a diverse learning experience. On top of the 3 hours per week of online content, there's an additional 6 hours per week per subject of individual study. This is things like assignments, readings, revision, and this is on average. So all up per unit on average, we're looking at 9 hours per week worth of work. So full-time, you're looking at 36 hours per week. Now, some of those units will require more time, some will require less, and there'll be some weeks where you'll require more time and some weeks where you require less. So these are only averages. There's a broad range of assessments in the graduate diploma. So we have some essays, some reports, but we also have statistical analyses, study proposals, conferences, group presentations, oral presentations, posters, a whole range of things to emulate the different kinds of communication strategies we use in research. We also have a high level of accountability. It's an online course. It's easy to get lost. So we have weekly and fortnightly activities that are typically assessed. So they count towards your final grade. These might be quizzes, reflection activities, discussion pieces. Can I grab the next slide, please? Let's talk a little bit about each unit. So theories of personality, we'll ask questions like, what is personality? What are the dominant theories of personality? Is it biological? Is it social? Is it a self-concept? What about psychodynamic, Freudian ideas? We'll talk about how do we measure and test for personality and take a really big interdisciplinary perspective. We'll look how personality intersects with cognition, development, your health, work, culture, and more. Can I grab the next slide, please? Stats, I think this is the best unit, obviously not because I'm running it, but we go with a scientific method. We make the assumption that you've never studied science before. That's where we start. What is science and how is it applicable to psychology? We talk about hypothesis generation, common research design features, as well as statistical analyses. And if it helps to quell the anxiety, we have very little maths involved in this stats course. There's very, very few mathematical calculations you'll do yourself. Next slide, please. Social psychology, we look at how thoughts, feelings, and behavior of individuals are influenced by actual, imagined, or implied presence of others. So how do we relate to other people around us? The unit looks at major theories and the research methods, as well as ethical issues. There's a big focus on attitudes and their limitations because these are really big determinants of social behavior. All right, can I grab the next slide, please? Developmental psychology, we take a really big lifespan perspective. So sometimes when we talk about developmental psychology, we think about birth and childhood, but we actually go all the way through adulthood to death and dying as well, particularly in terms of physical, cognitive, and socio-emotional capacities. All right, can I grab the next slide, please? Cognition, behavioral neuroscience. So we look through the basic neuroanatomical features. It's a bit of a whirlwind tour of the brain, if you like, as well as how these relate to a range of phenomena covering perception, learning, memory, intelligence, the list goes on. It's quite a broad unit. And we also look at measures used in neuroscience, as well as a little bit of neuroimaging. I'll go to the next slide, please. Psychopathology. We're going to ask the question, what do we mean by abnormal behavior in this unit? Is that even the phrasing that we should use? Is psychopathology an appropriate term? We'll look at how we do clinical assessments and diagnoses for things like depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, the list goes on. And we'll look at symptomology, the prevalence and incidence of these different disorders, etiology, and the treatment approaches as well. So it's quite a big unit. PSY 407, Psychology in Practice. This is, I like to think of this unit as a day in the life of different kinds of psychologists. So we look at health psychologists, so keeping the healthy, managing chronic pain, behavioral medicine, organizational psychology, being an effective leader, hiring, recruitment, clinical psychology, so assessment, diagnosis, treatment, and rehab in day-to-day people, but also forensic psychology in the legal context. The thing that's interesting about 407 is that we actually bring in experts in the field. So we bring in a health psychologist to talk about health psychology. We bring in an organizational psychologist to talk about organizational psychology. So you're hearing it from the horse's mouth. Can I go to the next slide, please? The last slide on my tour through the graduate diploma is the psychology research capstone. This unit is designed to be forward thinking and preparing you for honors. So you learn about advanced research methodology, design, problems, like pre-registration and open access. You explore the literature in an area of your interest, and you actually formulate a project, a research project, that you might be able to use in honours and begin to plan for some of the common barriers that students face. So this might be related to ethics, to slow participant recruitment, or that horrible moment when you get 7 to 8 months into your honours year and you find a paper that reports the exact same study that you're conducting and you go, I've got nothing now. All right, I think that's everything. If we go to the next slide, I think it's question time. So, any questions? Nothing's coming in just yet. I spoke very quickly, but this is recorded. All right, well, Joe, I might hand it over to you to talk about, oh, wait, we've got a question coming in. What sort of times of days are online classes run, or does it vary greatly? So we're currently sorting out exactly what our timetable will look like for next year. Typically, historically, in the graduate diploma, we've run our classes in the mornings on Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. So usually they're the 3 days. It can vary. At one point, we did have afternoon classes as well, but it's looking like mornings seem to be the preferred time. Someone's asked about the cost of the course. I might leave that to the admin team to respond to that. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head.
Yeah, Claudia's responding to the question now, Chris.
Perfect. Good question, though. All right, if anything else comes through in the Q&A, I'll type in responses. But thank you. Joe, it's all yours.
Great, thanks very much, Chris. So we'll now talk about the Bachelor of Psychology Honours, which is the 4th year in psychology. So the key points are that it's a mixture of coursework and a thesis project. So the thesis is about 1/3 of the course, and the coursework is the other 2/3 of the course, and that includes a research methods unit. So we feel like it's a good balance between learning some practical, clinical related skills and also getting a really good grounding in research. You can undertake the course full-time or part-time, and you can start the course at the start of the year, which is typically February, sometimes March, and we also have a mid-year intake available as well. In terms of the fees, it is around $26,000 for the entire course, and fee help is available. However, we do have at least 2 scholarships have been secured at this stage, and they will be $20,000 each, which substantially reduces the cost of the course. They'll be available for the students with the 2 highest weighted average marks coming out of their bachelor's degree, and they need to be scores at least 80% or higher. So in terms of what you get out of doing the course, so importantly for most people, I believe, would be being eligible to apply for APAC accredited postgraduate psychology courses, including a Doctorate of Psychology in Clinical, Master of Psychology Clinical, and the Master of Professional Psychology. And Cairnmillar does offer all those courses, so we provide that pathway through. So if a Cairnmillar student gets a weighted average mark of at least 75% for honours, they will get an automatic interview for the Master of Professional Psychology selection process. If they get a weighted average mark of above 85%, they'll get an automatic offer for an interview into the Master of Clinical Psychology. So it's actually a very competitive process to get interviews for the Master of Clinical Psychology. So that's a way we help our students sort of get that foot in the door for interviews as part of the selection process into that course. And of course, some people like to take a break at the end of 4th year, and you consider employment in a range of other fields or or related fields such as counselling, maybe some research, but certainly community services and business areas. And also it does open some pathways for further study in other fields as well, apart from psychology. So every year the Australian government does a National Student Experience Survey, and these are the stats that came back for the Bachelor of Psychology honours at Cairnmillar, which are very favourable compared to the national average, and these were also in the context of delivering this course online. It is an on-campus course, but because of COVID, we had to deliver it online because of social restrictions. So 92% of respondents rated the teaching quality very positively, along with the support services, and were positive about the overall educational experience. And 88% were very positive about skills development. And that's feedback we get quite a lot, that our assessments and our content that we deliver in the coursework units is very practical, and people feel that it builds their confidence towards becoming a clinician. The government also do a graduate outcomes survey. It's a longitudinal study, and they follow people up for at least 3 years. So for students who came out of the honours course 3 years ago, 83% of them are either working as psychologists or other mental health professionals, or they're currently enrolled in further training in psychology, such as a master's or a doctorate of psychology. So that's a fantastic outcome. So a little bit about the team. There's myself and Roseanne, who are the course coordinators. We also supervise research students in the honours program. And next year, Roseanne will be the Thesis unit coordinator as well. And she's also the deputy chair of our ethics committee. But I think, Rose, I should be handing over to you at this point.
I think so.
I will mute and let you keep talking. Thanks.
No worries. So that's Joe and I. Joe, do you want to go to the next slide? So we also have Dr. Stephen Trawley, who runs the research methods unit, and so he's a very experienced researcher who collaborates with a lot of across disciplines. So he brings a lot of experience into the unit, and he makes it fun, and it's a very practical research methods unit. So it's really tailored to supporting the thesis units. And he also runs drop-in sessions in the second semester where students can come and ask him questions about research methods and their analyses they're doing, both qualitative and quantitative. So that's a really amazing support that Stephen offers to students. We also have Dr. Kat Cornaughton, who runs 2 of our units, the psychological assessment unit and developmental psychopathology across the lifespan. So Kat has been a practicing health psychologist and brings a lot of practical experience as well as research experience to the team. So once again, with all of our team, I'm not biased at all, but we've got a fantastic teaching team and get really positive feedback with the experiences that students have in these units. Next one, Joe. We also have Dr. Terry Bartholomew, who's has forensic psychology experience and has been working as a psychologist as well as an academic for years, so brings an amazing amount of experience to the team. So he runs a professional practice and professional ethics unit. And then we also have Jackie Green, who's new to our team. She's our newest member, and she's been working as an educational psychologist for a long time. So really brings a lot of practical experience to the course as well. So as Joe mentioned earlier, a lot of our units have that real practical skills development emphasis, because a lot of our staff have been either previously working as a psychologist or currently working, so they bring that practical experience as well as obviously the theoretical knowledge. Thanks, Joe. So if you're doing this course full-time and you join us in February, it's over 1 year. So in first semester, you'll be doing the professional practice and ethics unit, psych assessment, as well as research methods, and you'll also start your thesis. In second semester, you'll do developmental psychopathology, the evidence-based practice and practice-based evidence unit, so 2 coursework units, and then you'll do the research thesis 2 units. So that's double weighted. So it's still a full-time load, but you have a bit more time to focus on your research thesis. You can also do this course part-time if you start in February. So in your first year, you'll cover all of the main coursework units other than research methods, and then in the second year it's really focused on research, so you do your research methods unit as well as all of your thesis units. You also, as mentioned, we also have a mid-year intake, so you can start in mid-year, and if you do that, it's part-time, so you can either do it across 2 years. So in first year you'll start off with 2 coursework units, then you jump into the thesis, so you do your research methods and your thesis units, and then you finish off your second year in the course with the last 2 coursework units. But we also have this option, because we are aware that if you start in mid-year and you take 2 years, it kind of pushes your opportunities to apply for masters a bit further. So for some students, they want to complete it by the end of the following year, so in 18 months. So this allows them to finish at the end of that year and then apply for masters the following year. So if this is the what you're looking for, you can do it in 18 months. So you start off with a half load. So you start off easy in terms of starting part-time with 2 coursework units. This gives you a bit of an indication too of whether or not you want to increase to a full-time load, because if you do this option, your second semester will be a full-time load. So this is where you complete the remainder of your coursework units, but you also start your thesis. And then your final semester is once again a half load and really focuses on just completing your thesis. So that's a really nice way to finish off, because you're only focusing on the thesis component. Thanks, Joyce. So it is a face-to-face course. We have taught it for, is it 3 years now? The years just all blur now, but we have been teaching it online. This semester we've been teaching it hybrid. So it will remain face-to-face going forward. There are plans to, in the future, offer it as an online option as well. But that's still undergoing approval process. So we're not guaranteeing that's going to be offered in the near future, but there will be options for hybrid going forward. But if you have any questions around that, please don't hesitate to contact us. There's a range of different learning activities, small group discussions, role plays, vignettes, presentations. A lot of the coursework units have a lot of case studies, which makes it really sort of interesting and applied. Obviously, there's a lot of individual study, written assessments, and other forms of assessments, as well as orals and quizzes. Next, Joe. I won't go into all of these in detail because I'm mindful of the time, but professional practice and professional ethics, this is where you look at the guidelines and start to understand the complexity of some of the clients you might see in the future. And a lot of the tutorials focus on some case studies where you might have ethical or legal or practical dilemmas that you have to really think about. So this is a fantastic way to start looking at the complexity of the cases you might get. Okay. Psych assessment. So this is starting to look at basic assessment strategies, observation, interpersonal communication styles, interviewing, but also looks at some of the common tests that are used. Okay. So developmental psychopathology across the lifespan. So this is starting to look at the different factors, risk factors, as well as protective factors that put children, adolescents, and adults at greater or less risk of developing psychopathology, and looking at sort of the diagnostic criteria as well. And then evidence-based practice and practice-based evidence. This is really developing your skills of going forward in that scientist practitioner model and really understanding how to look at evidence to support practice in the future. But also we're starting to look at a range of different interventions, common interventions that you might use in the future. Next, Jo. And then research methods, like I mentioned earlier, it's really practical and looks at both qualitative and quantitative approaches.
Thanks,
I'll pass
Rose.
on to you, Jo. Yep.
Thanks. And so research methods really dovetails into the research thesis. So this is probably one of the most challenging parts of the course, but students find it really rewarding and are well supported. So you'll plan and undertake a research project. You'll have to consider some of the ethical considerations of doing research with humans. You'll do a substantial literature review using very systematic approaches, which is a great skill for learning in terms of how to search the literature properly, reviewing it, critiquing it. And then in the second unit, which is the double unit, you'll write up your thesis in the form of a journal article. And some of our students do go on to submit their thesis with further work and get it successfully published. So projects can be quantitative, which is, numbers. You're working with numbers using Excel or Jamovi, which is a bit like SPSS, or you can do qualitative research where you're often working with interview transcripts or focus group transcripts, or perhaps a text-based answers to open-ended questions that you set up in a survey. So your supervisors are centrally allocated based on your preferences and their availability. So we send out a list with the supervisors, their research areas, and you rank them in the order of preference, and we do our best to give you one of your higher preferences. So the assessments are there. So in the first unit, you do a literature review assessment, and then you have a research proposal oral presentation, which is a hurdle task where we give you feedback to support you in being successful in doing a feasible study. And depending on whether you're working with pre-existing data, you may or may not need to do an ethics application. So just looking at the time, I think we're going okay for time. We'll start taking questions now, though, and I'm just going to put up this first slide and then another slide where you can see some of the example project areas of studies that we currently have honours students doing, so you can sort of get a sense of how broad it is. And just to mention that some supervisors are quite flexible in the kind of the scope or the area that you might want to study, and some are have sort of more structured pre-existing projects that you can join. So any questions that you have for Rose and I?
Jo, there is a question that's come through, and it might not be directed at you or Rose, but I think you can answer it in with assistance from Anne and I. Are there any barriers/issues to applying for masters at a university, having done the honours at an institute rather than a university?
Yep,
No.
really great, valid question. The short answer is no. So we have students who've gone on to the masters at Monash Uni, masters at ACU, and other universities as well. So we've never had any feedback it's been a barrier. So all these courses, these fourth year courses, including ours, have been accredited by APAC, which is the accrediting body for psychology training in Australia. And so we're all at that same level. You have to meet the competency set by APAC to successfully complete fourth year. And we actually underwent accreditation last year. So we are kind of right up to the minute in terms of having recently been accredited by APAC.
Reaccredited, because we've been accredited for a while.
Right. Reaccredited.
And
yes.
APAC make you do reaccreditation just to make sure that any changes that you've made, you're keeping up to date with their expectations. So we've had that recently approved.
Another one has come through asking, being an on-campus program, how many places are available for honours?
We haven't set the targets for cut-off yet, but we can we expect that we will be taking between 40 to 50 new students into the course next year. Bearing in mind that we already have some students who started part-time or who started in the mid-year intake. So currently we have 80 honours students across our mid-year intake, part-time, full-time February intake. So we have about 25 thesis supervisors available, so we can take quite a large number of honours students.
Thanks, Jo. That's it for now.
Great. Well, if you have any more questions, as you're listening to Anne, of course, just pop them into the chat. So, Anne, I will hand over to you now. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jo. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming along to tonight's session. Now we're going to get to the fun stuff, the fun part, and that's the applications side of things. My name's Anne. For those who've come in late, I'm the Deputy Academic Registrar here. Now, just going to give you guys some quick, we'll go through some quick things. The applications are currently open, and we will close the application portal on the 31st of October, which is not very far away. So we'll use the November period to then review the applications, and offers subsequently will be made shortly thereafter. Orientation will be in February. We haven't confirmed the dates as yet, but generally with classes commencing on the 20th of February 23, so generally about a week or 2 weeks prior to the course commencement will be your compulsory orientation, where you will be required to come on campus. Now, in order to apply, you need to obviously go to our website, and basically if you hit on the apply button on the top right hand corner, it's situated throughout the website anyway, so you should be able to find that. So you would then click on apply now. Thanks, Jo. And you'll get to our lovely portal. Now, if you've not applied to Cairnmillar before, you'll need to, the first step as a new user, you'll need to register. So you'll need to pop in your details. And what's really important is that the email that you put in, that you continue to use that through the, I guess, the progression of your application stage if you have any inquiries. And if you've already registered, you can then go straight into the portal and apply. So keeping in mind that this is your view as a prospective student, you will be able to go in and continue to log in at any particular time to see the progress of your application, and just in case that you might be curious to see how things are progressing. Thanks, Jo. I think the course coordinators have gone through the requirements, the entry requirements into the course, but what I will touch on for any prospective applicants who have completed their psychology sequence more than 10 years, we also do offer a refresher program, which is a grad cert, and that's offered in a part-time mode. But more information is available certainly on our website. These are our entrance requirements. The course coordinators have gone through that quite in detail, but this is all very clearly outlined on our website as well. What I will touch on, though, when you are submitting your application, it's really important to submit a complete application. So not only do we require your academic transcripts, your most current transcripts, because I know some of you may be currently undertaking some study, may not have finished. So most current up-to-date transcripts, but we also need proof of residency and citizenship. And important note, especially with the grad dip in psych science or the grad cert, this is not available to international students as it is only offered online. Thanks, Joe. As I just touched on before, it's really important to submit a complete application. If you don't, what then happens is we then have to do some follow-up, and it has a potential to then delay your application being assessed with a potential outcome. So curriculum vitae is important, your most current academic transcript, a 500-word statement as to why you wish to study at Cairnmillar. For students, international students who are applying for the honours program, an IELTS of 7. However, if you've done a 3-year program here in Australia, that would be deemed as equivalent as well. And if we have any, do we have any students who are overseas or offshore? Any thumbs up? No? Then that's okay. Then next slide, please, Joe. If at any point you are unsure, our FAQs on the website are, they're quite comprehensive. So I would certainly encourage you to have a look and, type in the thing you're looking for in the search engine there, and it will pop up. And in the event that you may not find the answer on our website, next slide, Joe. You can certainly email us. Claudia, can you pop our contact email address for the students in the chat? Now, tuition fees. If you are an Australian citizen, you are eligible for a fee help loan. Thanks, Claudia. And it's very much, it's a government loan scheme, and how it works is once you start earning a certain amount of money, that's when X amount is taken out of your pay to pay for the debt that you've incurred. So it works very similar to a HECS debt. These are some other, ZEFI is another option, but we would encourage you to get some further advice on that before exploring that. And if you are interested in paying your fees up front, you certainly may do so. And we do offer also students the option to enter into a payment plan if you're having trouble paying your fees up front. So we're pretty flexible in that regard as well. Thanks, Joe. So yes, I already touched on fee help, government loan scheme, online applications, invite. So once, if you are eligible for a fee help, what happens is at the time when you accept your offer, shortly thereafter, you'll be sent an invite to then accept your offer. And that's done online. It's through a link. It's fairly easy step. And that's another useful website if you need to refer to. Now, we're running out of time. So if I'll ask Claudia, can you pop that link in the chat if you are interested? Do check out the campus and our facilities. It's a we're very conveniently located, close to transport, and yeah, the campus is of very high value. And I think that's the end. Over back to you, Joe.
Thanks very much, Anne. So we're all available to take any questions that you might have, whether it's about the graduate diploma or grad cert in psychological science, or the honours, or the application process. Now's your time to ask us while we're still online. And of course, if you've got any questions, you can email us as well at a later date.
Okay, do you want me to take this one, Claudia? There is an info night thank you, for the MPP, and that is on this Thursday. I'll get Claudia, been a little busy bee tonight. Could you pop in? You'll need to encourage you to register for the session. It's on this coming Thursday, and yeah, there'll be lots of we'll be covering lots of different courses, and different course coordinators will also be present.
Okay, so if there's no further questions at this stage, I think we'll wrap up for this evening. Just like to thank you all for taking the time to join us and find out more about the Cairnmillar Institute. As I mentioned, please get in touch with us about any questions that you might have, and we'd be very happy to have a further conversation with you. And these slides will be coming out. And in fact, I think perhaps a recording of the whole session will be made available to people who've attended tonight.
Fantastic. Thank you, Joe. Thanks, everyone.
Great. Thank you, everyone.
Good night.